rush through the weekly rushes. I got it right. A little gallop through, a canter, a trot through the film news and some streaming news that's landed this week. If you don't follow us on Popcorn Junkies Instagram accounts, just the Popcorn Junkies, where you'll also get other bits and snippets of news there too. The news around the Alec Baldwin shooting is constantly rumbling along. The tragedy of Helena Hutchins' death has led to sort of two kind of developments in the story this week. One is that obviously Alec Baldwin, traumatized by the experience, as we all know, he in no way did he set out to shoot the cinematographer, but his wife is concerned about the possibility of him experiencing quite severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and she's quoted as saying, Alec had a really traumatic thing happen and I'm trying to limit the PTSD. You look at what happens to soldiers and police officers when something like this happens, it's traumatic. We just came up here for quiet. They've escaped, they've headed off somewhere. Alec Baldwin has been in touch with Helena Hutchins' family. He is the producer of the film, so if any sort of health and safety measures were cut or were some sort of shortcuts were made, I do feel that whilst he won't be culpable necessarily for the shooting, he may well be culpable for the health and safety or conditions in which the shoot was occurring. In other news, the armourer, who obviously is in the spotlight, the armourer who's called Hannah Gutierrez Reed, sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly, her lawyers are suggesting that potentially an act of sabotage happened on set. I think the inference being that a disgruntled member of the crew potentially put live rounds in the packets of dummy rounds. This strikes me as quite far-fetched, especially given that many of the crew members who did have a dispute with the producers were walking off set and were wanting to leave set or leave the shoot due to health and safety issues. So unless you were particularly sort of twisted and kind of contradictory, that would seem strange. So I think this is going to really rumble along, and could potentially become a legal labyrinth as the sort of focus of blame and responsibility keeps shifting around. I mean, for me, looking from the outside, I would say that the simplest end solution to this is going to be that the entire production failed in its health and safety assessment or in its maintenance of a safe set. So. Casting news, big casting news this week. I haven't heard anything about Robert Downey Jr. for absolutely ages. There was that sort of terrible attempt at Dolittle, wasn't there? And that was the last I saw of him. There's been lots of stories, rumour mills, sort of stuff going around saying that he's going to be starting the Sherlock Holmes film soon. I think whatever his next choice is, it has to be a significant one because he's on his uppers. He's Iron Man, Sherlock Holmes was good. You want something that doesn't quite sort of nosedive in the way that Dolittle did. So what do you do in doubt when you need a big vehicle to kind of get you back in the public's eye? You join the Christopher Nolan film. We've reported about this in recent weeks. Cillian Murphy is cast to play Oppenheimer, essentially the inventor of the technology that created the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer. Emily Blunt is in discussions to play Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer's wife, but two new big names have been added to the potential cast list, and that's Robert Downey Jr. and Matt Damon. We don't as yet know what their roles will be, but we know that this is becoming an absolutely giant project. I mean, it's got all of those elements that a Nolan needs, which is a remarkable cast, a bit larger than life story. I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the Manhattan Project, splitting the atom, all that kind of stuff. The internal struggle of creating something quite astonishing and life-changing for the planet, and at the same time creating something that could destroy it. A curious detail, which I'm not entirely sure if the producers are aware of, though I suppose any time that you release a film is going to be close to some anniversary. But the release date of the movie is July 21st, 2023, which is 2 weeks before the anniversary of the Hiroshima bomb. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if you see that date shift and change. Sofia Vergara, oh my God, Modern Family. Sofia Vergara, beautiful, funny, smart, all those things. Perhaps struggles with having been typecast in Modern Family. She was always very good, always very funny. She's got what possibly could be the absolute life-changing and career-changing gift of a role. She's scheduled to play the drug queenpin, Griselda Blanco, who was a Colombian, drug cartel lady, not a drug lord, but do you call a drug lord a drug lady? Is it like lords and ladies? Griselda Blanco was also apparently the most successful drug lord / lady, most profitable in history. She managed to do that thing which was blend charm and brutality in her handling of business and family, which in many ways, when you get these characters that can sort of cradle charm and warmth and then flip to total brutality and sinister and sort of essentially sanction the death and lopping off of heads of all sorts of people, that becomes a much richer character to play than either one or the other. So I think this is going to be, do you think this could be career changing for Sofia Vergara? I think we could see her in a completely different light. Griselda Blanco was originally known as Black Widow. Her nickname was Black Widow, and also Cocaine Godmother. Imagine being called the Cocaine Godmother. Yeah, can you go and see a godmother, please? She's got white powder all over her nose. I mean, obviously the thing about these drug lords and ladies is they rarely take the drugs themselves, do they? Vergara is also producing. It's the only slight fly in the ointment for me is whenever you get the talent that's on screen producing, you perhaps run the risk of overindulging the performance choices of the actor or actress in front of the camera, though there's a strong case for Ozark. Jason Bateman doesn't do that. But this isn't the first time that Griselda Blanco has been immortalised on the big screen. Catherine Zeta-Jones, bizarre casting, played her in a movie, I think in 2017, called Cocaine Godmother. That's her nickname. But also, apparently, there's also another project in the works or in development with J-Lo. Now, wouldn't J-Lo make a fantastic Griselda Blanco, Cocaine Godmother? So it's a big week for kind of strong female actors, actresses getting cast in giant roles. I mean, that's a big one, Sofia Vergara's. But Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, you know her, Wonder Woman. And she's also to be seen any minute now. I think next week it comes out in Red Notice with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Ryan Reynolds. She has been cast to play the evil queen in Disney's live-action version of Snow White. Now, Snow White was the original, if you like, game changer for the Mouse House, as they call Disney, back in 1938. It was their first animated feature released at a cinema. Obviously stars the infamous dwarfs and Snow White and the evil queen and Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, who's the fairest of them all. Lots of people have issues with the live-action versions of most Disney films. I mean, Jungle Book, Dumbo, The Lion King, you name it, it gets done. Aladdin. How do you feel about it? Does it rile you? Do you feel that they need to be changed? But I could ask a more fundamental question. We can all say they shouldn't be changed. Cruella, you know, you could all say that they shouldn't be changed. But do we actually, as grown-ups, go back to the original films and watch them? I mean, would we ever go back and watch, say, I don't know, The Lion King animated? I wouldn't. But would I go and see The Lion King for a new generation? Possibly, yes. So there's a strong argument that this intellectual property or IP, this is another way of resuscitating it for Disney, repackaging it and selling it to a much more sort of critically, visually savvy audience, because youngsters today are almost like 45-year-old viewers back in the 1980s. Gal Gadot is cast as the evil queen. Also involved in the sort of creative team is Benny Pasek and Justin Paul. They're the Oscar winners behind La La Land, so obviously the music's going to be up front and in your face. Could we be looking at a sort of Frozen situation? I quite like Snow White just going la 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 la, and the birds just kind of twittering around and stuff like that. How do you do Snow White and keep that charm? Are they going to just make it dark? Dark. I don't know about that. So what do you think? Do you think Gal Gadot is good for the evil queen? What are your feelings about live action remakes at the Disney studios? Now, this is a story, again, a little bit like Snow White, from the hallowed days of Hollywood of old. Natalie Wood. We all remember Natalie Wood, don't we? Her sister, who's written a new memoir, has alleged that Kirk Douglas, Spartacus Kirk Douglas, Michael Douglas's father, sexually assaulted her sister, Natalie Wood. Now, infamously, Natalie Wood was married to Robert Wagner. She sadly died in that boating incident. By all accounts, I didn't realise this until recently. Christopher Walken was, I believe, on the boat at the same time. He's never really talked about it publicly. But Lana Wood, who's Natalie Wood's sister, has suggested that Douglas assaulted Wood as a teenager when she visited him at Chateau Marmont in LA. Michael Douglas's publicists have been approached, and the only statement that's come from Michael Douglas's sort of people, if you like, is may they both rest in peace. But in the book, she says that Natalie said to her, "He hurt me, Lana. It was like an out-of-body experience. I was terrified, I was confused." And according to the book, apparently Natalie Wood's mother said to her, "Suck it up." So, before we all start to think, is she trading on the memory of her sister? How do we have any way of verifying this? Can we make this, can we find any truth in this? I mean, you know, at the end of the day, Hollywood was a place of huge exploitation. Some would argue it still is a place of exploitation. So we've seen it in television in the UK, we've seen it in politics, Harvey Weinstein, we know that it happens. So who's to say that it hadn't happened then? But was it Kirk Douglas? Well, in another biography of Natalie Wood, there was also a reference to rape, and the perpetrator is referred to as in this other biography, as one of Natalie's childhood idols, a powerful married movie star more than 20 years older than she is. Fits the picture. But to give the counter argument, Natalie's daughters, with Robert Wagner, suggest that Lana is exploiting her sister's memory, just as she exploited the kind of situation and the circumstances around Natalie Wood's death. What do you think? It was a big story, this, her death, and do you feel that they should be allowed to rest in peace? Is Michael Douglas right there? But if Kirk Douglas was the perpetrator, should something be done even after his death? What can be done after his death? We're big fans of Ray Liotta. Ray Liotta has the kind of face that is like the moon. It's like the craters of the moon. It's like he's been struck by asteroids, meteorites. It's like he's had pickaxes just thrown at him. He's craggy. He's rough. He manifests for me the whole Goodfellas, the whole gangster thing. So can you imagine Ray Liotta receiving a horse's head in his bed? I mean, I don't think it actually landed in his bed, but he was sent a horse's head. And guess who he was sent a horse's head by? He was talking to Jay Leno recently. Ray Liotta was sent a horse's head by Frank Sinatra's daughters. Just pause and think about that. Frank Sinatra infamously kind of tied up with the whole mob thing. And of course, the horse's head thing is a hangover from The Godfather. You know, it's a signal, it's a sign that you step further, it'll be you that's next. Got your head chopped off and probably plopped in someone else's bed. Liotta said, whilst talking to Jay Leno, we would do the reason for this he's revealed is because he didn't sign up to Frank Sinatra's daughter's project about their father. Instead, he signed up to HBO's The Rat Pack, and because they were resentful and angry and disappointed, Liotta said, we were doing the HBO movie and I got delivered a horse's head. Obviously, it wasn't a real one, but it was a horse's head. And you know, a horse's head means you're toast. It turned out that his daughter sent it and said, oh, you could do this one, but you couldn't do the one that we wanted you to. I don't care if it's not a real horse's head or not. A horse's head, a fake horse's head, just a plushie's horse's head sent to you is enough. Don't you think? Don't you think? So even Ray Liotta, that sort of sturdy, granite, fissured-faced man of steel, even he was made to feel unnerved when Frank Sinatra's daughter sent him a horse's head. How would you react? Now, this is a bit of a geeky one for the geeks out there. Taika Waititi, we all know Taika Waititi, director of Jojo Rabbit, comic actor, sort of alongside Flight of the Conchords, What We Do in the Shadows, all that kind of stuff. He was recently in Free Guy as well. He's adapting an infamous graphic novel by Alejandro Jodorowsky, and it's called The Incal. Now, Alejandro Jodorowsky worked with Moebius when they were trying to develop his own adaptation of Dune. Of course, Dune is out in the cinema now, and often people say, what about Alejandro? How do you say it? Alejandro. But what about his attempts? And yeah, his attempts were intriguing, but what came out of his attempts to make Dune was a graphic novel called The Incal. And Jodorowsky, it's a space opera. It's just another space opera. This really excites me, this kind of thing. So Jodorowsky himself has said Taika Waititi is the man for the job, which I think is great, don't you? But joining Taika Waititi, and this is my most exciting thing, we're huge fans of Flight of the Conchords here. We were huge fans of What We Do in the Shadows, the original film. I haven't really got into the series as much because I love this guy, Jermaine Clements, who's one of the original Flight of the Conchords. And he was also in the original What We Do in the Shadows, and I wish he was in the TV series because then I'd probably watch it. He's working alongside Jermaine Clements on this big screen adaptation. Taika Waititi said of the news himself, the films and graphic novels of Alejandro Jodorowsky have influenced me. Is it Alejandro? I'm giving it a Spanish thing. I don't even know if it's got it. Alejandro Jodorowsky have influenced me and so many others for so long. I was stunned to be given the opportunity to bring his iconic characters to life. And of course, Waititi is currently finishing up or shooting or doing or at some point in production on Thor, Love and Thunder, which is an incredibly camp space opera. And to be honest with you, there's rumours that Taika Waititi is going to make Flash, the movie, or a new adaptation of Flash. And when I think of his last Thor film, it has that space opera campness that you need for these things. So I think he's perfectly placed for The Incal, and I also am really looking forward to his new Thor film. So it brings us to that part of the Weekly Rushes, which is the films of this week. And of course, there are 3 big movies being released. Well, 2 big movies and one sort of curiosity. Eternals, the Marvel Cinematic Universe returns with Eternals. Now, this is directed by Chloe Zhao, who was the director of Nomadland and The Rider. She's an art house film director. She's been landed or plopped on this. I mean, obviously she will have taken the gig. And this is it's a new set of characters, the Eternals. It doesn't have "the" in the title, so I keep calling it The Eternals. Eternals is a new set of characters. There are a bunch of immortal people, I think, who protect the Earth from supernatural occurrences and events. I don't know how it sits alongside everything else. I don't know if I really care that it sits alongside everything else. I'm going to see it later today, and we will be reviewing it on the channel. But it's an MCU film, Marvel Cinematic Universe film. But of all the Marvel films released to date, rather worryingly for Marvel and Chloe and the cast of this film, it scored the lowest Rotten Tomatoes yet. It's down to 51% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a green tomato. The next one above that is Thor: Dark World, and then above that is The Incredible Hulk, and then above that is Iron Man 2. But 51% is really low for a Marvel Cinematic Universe film. It stars Angelina Jolie, it stars Gemma Chan, Richard Madden, Salma Hayek. I just wonder whether the cast isn't quite international enough or sexy enough for a Marvel film. It's just my feeling, it's just my sense of it. And I'm a huge Angelina Jolie fan. I'm also a huge Salma Hayek fan. So what do you think? Are you going to go and see it? Next up is a curiosity. This is Paul Schrader's The Card Counter. Now, Paul Schrader, you would probably best know, excuse the sound in the background, that's the builders. Paul Schrader wrote Taxi Driver, Raging Bull. He directed recently First Reformed, starring Ethan Hawke, cracking film. But he's interested in sort of solitary, spiritually alienated men struggling with their own crises of identity, belief, and moral certainty. Well, this film, it stars Oscar Isaac, it stars Willem Dafoe, it's got Tiffany Haddish in it, and it's about a veteran, a war veteran, who's also involved in the world of casinos and betting and all this kind of stuff. I've only seen the trailer. He's haunted by his past. Willem Dafoe plays this old sort of commander that I think looked after him. I think we're going to get something that's quite sort of dark and twisted and about masculinity. And you could argue, oh, haven't we seen enough about men and da-da-da-da-da. But men are part of the world, and I think sometimes you need a filmmaker who's just, mining that furrow. And Paul Schrader, there's no one better than Paul Schrader to do this. And then, of course, the other big movie of the week is Spencer. The movie about Princess Diana by Pablo Larraín, the director of Jackie, starring Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana. Big question mark from Nadia. Why haven't they got a British actress to play Princess Diana? You could argue that. We've seen Princess Diana in The Crown. Is there anything more to add? This film focuses on a weekend, and I think it's the weekend in which she realises that he's essentially, Prince Charles, not even having an affair, but that his love for someone else, we all know who, was the third person in the marriage. There's a little thing, a proviso or an epitaph just put at the front of the film, apparently, I haven't seen it yet, saying this is a fable based on a true tragedy. A fable based on a true tragedy, which kind of is your get out of jail free card, isn't it? For saying whatever we say here, we don't know if it's true, but sod it, we're going to go for it. Apparently, you can look forward to scenes in which she entertains eating her pearl necklace. I don't think that's a euphemism, and I don't think that's a double entendre. I think she literally wants to eat her pearl necklace. Maybe it's a dream sequence. And she also requests some time on her own from one of her assistants or maids or servants so that she can masturbate. Now, I don't know how that's going to float with the purists. I don't know how that's going to float with the royalists and all that kind of stuff. Stephen Knight, the guy behind Peaky Blinders, is also behind this film. So, my feeling around that is that it must have some heft or some sort of interestingly different take on something. But we'll be seeing it and we'll be reviewing it. Check it out. Those are the three films that if you get a chance to check out, watch them, then come back, watch our reviews, see if you agree. And that's the rushed rush through the weekly rushes. I hope I was rushed enough. Enjoy. See you next week.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.